Alright. Hey guys, it's Sestra here. I'm just making a video for Ranger builds, gear, boons, powers, whatnot. I kinda just didn't add any kind of voiceover or explanation to the video that I made earlier, and I figured that people probably need some more explaining, and yeah, I'm just doing this in one shot. I don't care if it's professional or not, and you're probably gonna hear my keyboard when I'm hitting all the tabs, but yeah. So in regards to gear, realistically, the only things that are necessarily interchangeable in my opinion is you can change like your Mirage for the Watcher set if you have it. It's pretty worthwhile for stats. Whether or not it's actually much better or not is kind of inconclusive, but I've been running Watcher as of recently because I don't really like wasting buffs and I'm trying to save money for mythic insignias. So yeah, Grister's Horns is just best, Ribcage the typical. For boots, I go for the Precipitation gloves and Wasteland Wanderers boots that are from Hardcore VOS. It's pretty easy to farm first mini boss, so it's pretty easy, cheap gear to get, at least in this state of the game. If you can see the Velvet Pants here I use, which is also very cheap to get. It's just offensive stats instead of defensive, and it's the same clip as the tier 3. It's just a little lower item level, but I personally don't mind losing around 200 for item level for offensive stats instead of defensive. For the shirt, it's kind of interchangeable. Shirt is kind of very much so the same in the sense of like your offhands bonus, or the same as like depending on like your guild boons or like mount equips. Pretty much I'd go for the AP, sorry not the AP, the crit strike, lowering your encounter cooldowns, and then whatever one that you choose to use. All my other ones are on alt tunes, but they come from, this one specifically comes from the BHE in the episode 3 part of New Surrender. In terms of the set is also static. It's something that everybody's been using. The music box set, that's pretty much a necessary BIS. The Red Eyes Glare also is, just from regular or hardcore VOS in the chest. I haven't gotten the Band of Air yet, but if you're ahead of me on that atmosphere, you'd want to take off the Red Eyes blinds and keep the glare. Pretty much the 7.5% stats from the glare is just much better and much more useful rather than dropping the 3% ranged, because that's just diminished. So yeah, outside of that, moving on to powers, always have aim shot. I've heard people doing some testing with careful attack if you have Band of Air, because it's just giving you more procs to actually attempt to proc Band of Air. I just keep rapid shot or strike on sometimes. To me, the third one really just flips around depending on what I'm doing, or the second one, sorry. In terms of encounters, you can go, or will go Hindering Shot, Constricting Arrow, and Long Strider. That's just the static, purely DPS build. If you want to do a buffer build, you can use Commanding Shot. You can kind of swap it out for whatever you prefer of the three. You don't necessarily have to only swap it out for Long Strider. I personally do it, but that's just kind of to your own discretion. As for dailies, obviously, Disruptive Shot procs our music box set, procs one of our feats, so kind of want to do that. Second one also is kind of preference. I wouldn't use Snipe or Slasher's Mark or Seismic. I guess it all really just depends. I use Force Ghost for AoE when I'm doing like VOS so I don't die. In terms of class features, Seeker's Vengeance is the best, undoubtedly. Crushing Roots versus like Aspect of the Pack and Falcon is kind of up there for personal preference. I just use Crushing Roots. I don't really play a support build, but if you were to play a support build, like Aspect of the Pack instead of Crushing Roots, and then going Commanding Shot is just a lot of buff, like 10% on the boss for your team, and then the extra 5 or 6, whatever the actual percentage is, in a trial for Aspect of the Pack. It's all kind of preference, but I don't really play buffing. For feats, Rate of Change, Thorned Roots, Biting Snares, Force Bond, and More Than Disruptive. Long Shot is kind of what you would only use if you were only playing a bow-specific build. Personally, I'm not into doing that. I play the game for DPS. I don't play the game to play it how I want to play it. Everybody's different, so it's kind of whatever you want to do. Critical Action increases crit save for stacks and whatnot. I don't think this is worth it. Thorned Roots is a shit ton of our damage. So there's no reasoning to use Critical Action. Biting Snares and Predator. That's what a lot of people like to debate over. I personally run a full recharge speed, cooldowns reduction build. So I need AP gain because I don't run it elsewhere, so I use Biting Snares. You can use Predator if you want. I just find Predator makes the game a little boring and a snooze fest because you're just literally making your rotation static instead of something that's situational based on phasing or what's up or what's not up. Whereas Predator, like, you use Hindering Shot for your Predator build to proc it because Hindering Shot doesn't really do damage. Whereas the way that I play, I use Hindering Shot with Force Bond, lowering all of my encounters, and then, you know, in my boons, I have recharge speed, and then in my offhand, I also have recharge speed. So when you throw all of that together with Force Bond, I feel like using Hindering Shot's just better to lower encounter cooldowns rather than to apply Predator. Plus, you're not going to have nearly enough AP unless you're on like Personal with Envenomed to run Predator. And then More Than Disruptive is kind of just what everybody uses Slasher's Mark isn't to be looked at. Commander-in-Chief also, sorry I forgot to, I skipped over that one. Commander-in-Chief is good if you're playing a pure roll build with like Long Shot, but I don't find it to be worth it in the way I play. Again, that's all personal preference, how you want to play the game. It's a game after all. For boons, I would suggest prioritizing your powers, so all of your power, your offensive stats, due to Gristro and everything else stacking based on your max percentage HP. I don't use my HP for boons. I instead go for a full defensive, and I've invested in all the defensive that I can. And then eventually when I get more runes, because I still haven't completed it, I'll slowly invest it into HP, but I find HP to be the lowest priority. And then for the tier 5s, I use Forte, Recharge Speed, right, because I don't use an AP gain build. Although that's personal preference, that's just what I do. And then Bloodlust everybody uses. For companion equips, recently Minsk has been making a fast approach. With that being said, you're losing Phase Spider, so that to me makes the Watcher set a little more valuable because you're losing the full almost 8% of stats, and so using Watcher kind of makes up for that and then gives you the bonus percentage damage on the bigger they are. Everybody uses Staldorf on different DPS builds, Materies, Alchemists I believe most people use, but yeah, it's great. Crit strike and combat advantage. Wild Hunter's Discipline can be changed out for the Black Dragon Ion Stone. I haven't upgraded mine, but I have, I guess. But yeah, I personally run a Wood Elf, so I don't need that extra crit strike, so I don't use that. I use the Wild Hunter. It's kind of, I could say it's personal preference. It's also just RNG. The 10% chance is RNG. It's better used in our class than everybody else, but that's also personal preference. Acute Senses again is based on how you have your stats balanced, but typically combat advantage is the hardest to cap in terms of priority for your power stats. For mount equips, again, this is like boons for your guild. It's like your offhand. These aren't static. I've seen people testing Ferocity, Ferocity giving you procs for Band of Air. I don't have it, so I haven't been using it, although it could be worthwhile to use. Outside of that, this is all just kind of static in a sense that you can just interchange it based on how your stats look. When it comes to mounts, insignias, bonuses that I use 2 times the Warlords, I use 2 times the Assassins and Artificers. I'm not a Gladiator's Guile kind of player. I don't find movement speed to be too necessary. We don't use Lionhearts anymore. We don't need our stamina up anymore. So realistically, if I need to get somewhere I can dash there, I don't really have to sit here and, conserve it anymore. Callers, I use Crit Sev, and Encounters. These other 3 are honestly just for item level slot. I guess incoming healing is nice to have, but like the AD control bonus, I don't worry about those. I literally just have those for item level. So yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to build. Again, you can use Mirage, you can use Watchers, it's all up to you. Sorry, artifacts, I usually will use either the journal set, although I do use recharge speed. Recharge speed is a build that I use, so if I'm in a run with people and everybody's using debuffs, I tend to ask to be put on heart, because the heart stat gives you 10% recharge speed. So it's nice. You might drop a little stats that are going to be a little moved around, but I think the recharge speed is well worth it. And it's usually what I run in, like, let's say dungeons, instead of just going on personal. If I'm at a boss and we're using debuffs, I'll use heart and then, swap to personal or whatever during AoE phasing. But yeah, that's about it. In terms of rotation, yeah, I didn't necessarily explain too much of it, but pretty much, yeah, the biggest thing to me is I use Hindering Shot as often as possible. I think that's one thing that not a lot of people pay attention to or do the same. That doesn't necessarily mean spam it every single time it's off cooldown, but anytime everything else is not off of cooldown yet, you want to use your Hindering Shot. I would prioritize it over using Aim Shot, because as much as Aim Shot does do some damage, it's better to get your cooldowns back up based on how I play and how most of my stuff is encounter power based. So yeah, you would do that, and then outside of that rotation, you can use what is it, Commanding Shot. You can use this as a buffer build. It's not too bad. The biggest thing I would suggest when it comes to using Commanding Shot is if you're running with like a healer who does shields, try your best not to make your teammates lose their shields by using Stagheart. It is nice to use, it does give you a nice little shield, but it's best to use it at times that the shielding healer can't. So for example, if you're playing with, like a Pally, and you're in like Zariel, or Tom, like during Heat Wave, if you see that they're using their bubble or something like that, and you know they can't get any more shields out, it's always nice to throw down an extra shield. But outside of that, just be wary and cautious, because if the shielder has tabbed and shielded the tank, you casting this will also make that shield go down, and you might potentially make some tanks and some healers not too happy by doing that. But yeah, that's about it. If there's anything else that I left out and you have questions or concerns about, I will reply to people in comments, and if there's anything in specific that people actually want to know that could be long enough to make a video and talk about, I am also more than open to doing that. So thank you very much, and hope you guys have a great day. Peace.